This episode of the CUInsight Experience is brought to you by Allied Solutions. With over 40 years of experience, our friends at Allied Solutions are focused on helping more than 4,000 clients grow their bottom line, protect their business and members, and evolve to stay ahead of the competition. Welcome to episode 135 of the show. I am Randy Smith, one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and I'm excited to have you all here today. This show is all about taking a deep dive with the leaders of the credit union movement who make it so great. Today, I'm having a conversation with Whitney Anderson-Harrell. Whitney is the president and CEO of Elements FCU in Indianapolis. So let's jump right in. Welcome to the show, Whitney.
Thanks, Randy. I'm so excited to be here today.
I am so excited to have this conversation with you. So we haven't had the chance before, but in doing a little homework, I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. And we're both originally from Michigan, so that's always a good sign as well. So could you give us a little bit of your story? Where'd your career start? And, how did it lead you to where you are today at the president and CEO of Elements Federal Credit Union?
Absolutely. It's really actually kind of funny. So when I was in high school, I was the first intern at Lansing Automakers Federal Credit Union, LAFCU. And then when I was at Michigan State, I actually worked at MSU FCU as an intern as well. And so just really starting out in the credit union industry really had an impact on me. One, just because of the people that I worked with and the fact that even just starting out my career, I found that it was really cool just to work with people and that credit union philosophy around people helping people and how much of an impact that had on me from the beginning. When I graduated, I went to work for Kraft Foods for about 13 years. So I worked in sales, brand management, did a lot of different work across the US with a lot of different customers with Walmart and Target, and had a wonderful career there, but really wanted to get back to people helping people and having that opportunity to make an impact on real individuals. And I'd always stayed in touch with people from MSU FCU. And it was interesting to see how people's careers have changed and the different things that they've done. And when I had the opportunity to come back and interview for the position, and I came back and I was the Chief Community Development Officer at MSU FCU. I was the president of the foundation, the Destor Fund, and had started one of the CUSOs, Evergreen 3C. And it was just amazing. So I spent 7 years there, but really wanted to have an opportunity to make more of an impact on the industry as well. And so working with April Clovis, who is one of the most amazing people that I've worked with ever.
She has been on the show. We'll have to link to that episode.
She's awesome. Just really gave me a lot of opportunity to see what impact could look like for leaders. And now I'm really excited to be here at Elements Financial FCU. And it has been an awesome first month and a half here. So it has just been amazing to see the industry from a completely different perspective. Each credit union is unique in its own way and has made such an impact for communities. And so I'm looking forward to really just learning more and seeing what we can do as an organization.
That's very cool. A question I normally ask is how you heard of credit unions and when you knew where one was. Both of us growing up in Michigan, I remember as a kid, my mother worked for Consumers Power after high school. So that was our credit union. First car loan. It's been merged now and things like that. Growing up in Metro Detroit, a lot of people, when I first got into credit unions, I was back home, people would be like, oh, we have to belong to the union to be a credit union member, so all these different things. Do you remember the first time your experience? You had the internship obviously very early. So
yeah, I think, my first experience with credit unions, I had no idea what they were. And then just like many people, and that's one of the things that I think we as an industry are working hard to kind of move away from a little bit, is that you have to work for whatever name the organization is, and that there are different ways to join credit unions. And so that was one of the biggest learnings for me when I first started out, and then figuring out how we can continue to work on that education for people to know that they can be a member at different credit unions.
Yeah, that's true. I'd love to just jump into credit unions right now. And trust me, I have so many questions on kind of this leadership journey that I'll get to. But that's what has me very excited with you. And something that you said earlier, I've made a note and I want to circle back. But What has you mentioned from a national level and to get more involved in our movement as a whole, what has you most excited when you look at the credit union movement going forward? And I'd love to hear what you're working on and where you think credit unions really need to be focusing as we move forward.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, when I think about credit unions and staying relevant is our relationship with people, with the community, and providing that best value back to the members. I think we have a huge opportunity. I mean, when you think about service, when you think about impact, that's what makes us different. And we really need to talk about that more. That education piece is just huge for me personally, and community is so important as well. And I think that just really starts with all of us talking more about it. It's just kind of cool to see people and see their reactions when they actually start understanding credit unions, understanding the products and services that we have, understanding when we're making a big difference for serving the underserved, doing things differently, making a difference for people, just that people helping people concept. And that it doesn't mean just certain segments of people, it means everyone. That makes me excited.
You were like preaching to the choir. I've said it for years that I feel like credit unions as a whole, we almost have Midwestern values where we're afraid to talk about ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's like we don't tell the amazing story enough, right? We're just like, we do good. We'll let people see our actions or something. So I love what you were saying there. A question that I had, you mentioned April, and I'd like to dig into that a little bit. Have you had mentors throughout your career? Was that something that you sought out or they found you? It's something that now that you've made it to the CEO chair, let's just say, and a lot of people that are listening to this podcast may want to be in a chair like that someday. So, that question of mentoring or mentors is if you could talk on that.
Absolutely. I think mentoring, the ability to be a mentor for someone else also has a big impact on your career. But April has been a mentor and an advocate as well. And I think, those are two different things. And so it's good to have, those individuals that are advocating for you when you're not in the room and talking to you about what those topics look like so that you can be prepared when you are in the room as well. So having an advocate is one thing, but mentoring is just so important. It has made such a huge difference for my career. You have personal mentors, you have professional mentors, you have people that come into your life just for a season of mentoring as well, which can make a huge impact. But it's really the key thing for me about mentors is the value of time and making sure that you are valuing your mentor's time and that you're also, vice versa for the mentee as well. But because we all have a lot to learn, but our time is valuable. And so we want to make sure that we're coming prepared to those meetings with the right questions and the ability to come in with an open mindset and listen, because sometimes everyone doesn't always tell you the feedback you want to hear, but that's oftentimes the best gift that you can receive. So I think that's the other piece of it where, it's okay to be uncomfortable in some of those situations. So maybe to seek out a mentor that is different from you so that you can gain some new insight.
I find what you just said there very interesting because on two different things that you said, one really had me thinking, but the idea of preparing for the meeting because their time is valuable too and they're giving it to you, right? But then also that idea of, finding somebody different, but also finding somebody who's willing to give you, I think all too often it's easier for any of us to just go, that's great, and move on. So to actually give that, I don't know if constructive criticism is the right term, but that's fantastic. So now, is that something as you've come up in your career that's become important to you to give back the other way as well?
Oh, yes, definitely. I have lots of individuals that I've worked with for many years and some that I've worked with different programs. I'm also on the board with the AACUC. They have a great mentoring program. So it's also seeking out different opportunities for both mentoring or being a mentor, because I really do believe you learn a lot from either relationship when you think about leadership and styles and understanding what, especially as new young people come into the work environment, it's good to have some of the younger mentees to kind of learn about what are the topics they're thinking about and what's relevant to them as well.
You mentioned you're on the board of AACU, so you've got to give Renee and everybody a shout out. That her Wagner Award was amazing. Renee introduced us, which was a fantastic. I may have told this story on the podcast before. Jill and I have a plant from Renee from when our dog died. She sent it to us. And we don't have any other plants because we both travel so much. So we'll come home and it'll be like, not doing well. And we'll be like, oh, Renee's sad. Renee's name gets brought up a lot in our house. So, one of the things that I love about this podcast is that I get to, pick the brains of people. And a lot of these questions over the years have been this kind of scratch my own itch question to figure out. I mean, sometimes I feel like if I have the question, maybe other people do. But I heard this on a podcast last year, and I've started asking everybody this year, has there been a investment that you made in your career that you're like, boy, that was a good one. And I give the example that Warren Buffett said it was a Dale Carnegie course that changed his career. Is there something for you that when you think back on that?
I would say when I was at Kraft and I was trying to figure out how I was going to make a big change in my career, it was investing in getting my MBA and having some exposure to thinking about things differently, meeting new people was a big part of that. And then kind of opening up my thought process from a leadership perspective. So that huge catalyst for change for me was getting my MBA and then actually having the, when you're somewhere for 13 years, you're used to it, you're comfortable, where the mountains and valleys are with everything. So it was a stressful time when I was thinking about making the change, but it was the best decision that I ever could have made. And those are the things, in our career where you're just sometimes you just got to take that leap and it can have the best outcome.
Now, hopefully that when I ask this question, it's people who maybe are listening to the podcast because they're interviewing at a credit union and they're trying to get into our industry, not people leaving. But if for somebody who's switching industries, when you're already established in one, any hacks or advice to give that person if they were listening today?
To go jump in completely is the biggest piece of advice that I could say. If you're going to do it and do it well. I have coming back into the industry, it was a big shift coming from consumer packaged goods, CPG, sales, marketing to financial industry to the credit union industry. That was a huge change for me, but I was excited about it. And I was like, I'm ready for this and I'm going to give it my all plus, because that's just kind of me as an individual. But I think if you're going to make a decision to make a big change, own it.
So have you always been that way?
Yeah. I know my friends are like, Whitney, oh my God, just relax. I'm I love going all in. If I make a decision, I'm all in.
I love it. Let me ask you a question about building a leadership team. You're obviously, now that you're the CEO, you've come into a leadership team. And I feel like often we talk about culture, but I kind of like to take a step back for a second to more of the beginning. And when you start to think about building that team, what characteristics are you looking for and what plays into your decision-making process? And then on the flip side of that, if you were to sit down and you're in that interview with somebody and somebody says something to you, is there something that just makes you go, nope, that's not going to work here?
Yeah. Yes, that definitely has happened before. I think when I think about building a team and having great leaders, for me, it starts with a couple of different things: integrity, trust, loyalty, which I think, one, you just need people like that at any organization. But of course, specifically with a financial institution, you need people with integrity. I enjoy people who can talk about things. We can disagree on things, but we can also find a path forward. So I like to ask lots of different questions that kind of bring things up to figure out how people deal with when people might not be on the same page for whatever that topic may be. Because I think we can't have a team of everyone that's like, yes, we should just do this. Oh yeah, that sounds great. There needs to be a healthy amount of discussion where we're not having groupthink as an organization, to make sure that we are staying relevant and we're making the right decisions for our members, for employees, and for our community. So with that being said, it's good to have people that think differently, that are okay to challenge things in a healthy, respectful way. But then we can all turn around and move forward. So when I think about that, those are some of the things that I look for in a leadership team. And of course, walking into this team, I have an amazing team here at Elements, and I'm looking forward to continue to get to know them more because, we're at the beginning of our journey here. I had a wonderful transition with the previous CEO, Lisa, and this is actually my first week that's my own week here. It's been really cool to kind of have that journey, that transition time with her, which was just amazing. And then now to really, it's my own moving forward. Yep. And I've enjoyed, this first week of having those conversations and talking a little bit about, my vision and mission for the organization and thinking about where we're going as an organization.
I think you're the perfect person to ask this question just because of even the space that you just said that you're in right now. How do you intentionally create that space? Because everyone's just getting to know you. I've heard other people say that when we're having these senior leadership meetings, it's everybody can talk and then we keep it in there, right? There can be disagreements, there can be whatever, but that takes one of those things you mentioned, a lot of trust in the leader that people can disagree. I guess how do you plan on creating that space for your leadership team that they know, hey, we can come to Whitney with stuff?
So I'm very direct and I'm we're not going to learn how to trust each other unless we actually work on those things. We spend the time. So just my style is I'm just going to ask the questions. And if we have an opportunity to talk, so whether it's a management meeting, I've really been very intentional about asking the questions. What are people looking for? What's important to them for this organization so that we can have a collective view on where we are and where we're going. And it's that ownership for all of us. I think trust is earned, but I also think that trust can be given. And I think, we've had a great opportunity right now to really it's a clean slate. So if you're choosing to share the things you want to share, this is the opportunity to do that in order for us to all move collectively together forward. I feel like it's going really well so far because I've just been asking a lot of those open-ended questions and I'm getting feedback. And I think that's how we're going to move the needle and continue to make an impact on the industry.
Let me ask you this. You've had teams before and you have a team now. There's, I'm sure, been a time where somebody disappointed you. How do you give that feedback with that ability to keep moving forward?
I'm just all about being direct. And that's one of the things. In fact, I just did it today at our town hall meeting. I talked a little bit about with the whole credit union. I'm just going to have a conversation. And I also expect that same feedback cycle for myself. If there is something that an employee needs from me, let me know. And I will give you that same respect because that to me is we're respecting each other and respecting the fact that you have someone's best interests at heart. I think if you just sit down and have the conversation and you can talk about things and move forward, that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything, but I think there's a space for us to just have the conversations and be able to learn and grow from them. And I think that's the biggest piece for me. There will not be a time that you're going to hear something from another team member about something that I want to talk to about you. I'm going to talk to you directly. And I think that's a piece of that trust and respect that if there's something that I have to say, I'm going to say it to the individual. And I've had leaders that do that, and it makes such a difference for your own confidence in their leadership abilities. And I think that's a big component of leadership as well.
Absolutely. So what does a town hall look like?
It's an all-employee meeting. So everyone, we have a hybrid workforce, but we had a huge group that really loves to come in for the all-employee meetings. And it's just a time to talk about a lot of the really important things that are going on from a strategic perspective at the credit union, but since this really is my first week, just me, I really wanted to have a follow-up conversation to talk a little bit about my style, who I am as an individual. You know, I did the fun things like some trivia, but also talking about communication and leadership style and the fact that if there's something going on, we can't like fix it and move forward if we don't know as a leadership team. And oftentimes, you know, that communication stops along the different lines of management or whatever it may be. But if we're going to like be the best that we can be, we have to understand what everyone is dealing with in order for us to move forward.
Absolutely. I'd like to kind of pivot over, and this was a place again that I was really excited to ask you a couple of questions on. I had a friend a few years ago when she became a CEO for the first time. She had been an SVP at a different organization and was very actively involved. But after she became the CEO, she was like, holy smokes, my previous boss actually shielded a lot of the board dynamic from me. And it's kind of that idea that you've heard some people say it's kind of lonely at the top, right? You have the board and you have your whole team. Now that you're the CEO, I guess any tips or anything that you've learned along the way as far as, you know, that board relationship, and then to kind of ask almost a more specific question. Let's say you come across the person who thinks their way is the only way. They may have good intentions, but how do you, let's say, deal with the squeaky wheel?
Oh, yeah. I think that is like a lot of the communication. So April and I have a great relationship, and she was definitely honest. Like, it is lonely at the top. And that's why it's important to utilize your network. And that's a big piece of it. I think staying in touch with friends, which quite honestly is how I even came back to the credit union industry in the first place. Networking is huge for me. And having those relationships can have such an impact, not only on your career, on where you might be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but it can have an impact on business as well. And so that piece of networking is huge, and always respecting people's time when it comes to that. But there's always a squeaky wheel. And I think we know that in every organization, that some organizations have a lot of squeaky wheels and some just have a few. But I think there's a silver lining to that. And that is understanding, you know, if one person is thinking something, there's a good chance it's more than just that one person that is feeling that way. So it's also acknowledging, you know, what's being said. And not everyone has the ability to deliver something in a way where you can receive it and find like the feedback part of it, because sometimes you just might be so irritated by the way that things are happening. But I will say, like, sometimes you have to like step back and really look at, is there an opportunity for us to improve or grow, or maybe make a little turn with something, to acknowledge the fact that they may not be the only one feeling like that. So I think the squeaky wheels have their advantages. But, you know, it's all in moderation.
That is true. Like so much in life. You know, one of the questions I had for you was, you know, you're both at MSU and now at Elements. They're both fairly big credit unions. And often the bigger we grow, the tougher it is to turn the ship, you know, that analogy. How do you continue, as you step into this new role, how do you continue to take chances or new risks or innovate to, you know, kind of keep the credit union, and maybe even I'll throw that out even broader, to keep our credit union movement moving forward? Yeah,
I was very candid like throughout my interview process and in talking about those things. Like, I love growth, innovation, new ideas. And I think that is what sets our industry apart. And I think in order for us to stay relevant, we have to be willing to do some of these things. Maybe we're not the first ones doing things, but we can't be the last ones doing things. That it's okay. It's also okay to take some risks, and maybe it didn't go exactly the way that we thought it would, but there was still like a lot of growth potential, and that's okay as well. And so from that perspective, it's really thinking about how we do grow and how we're looking at technology as well. That's a huge part of it. And here at Elements, it's just an amazing organization that has done so many really cool things, but I'm really excited about some of the ideas that I've had just being here the first couple weeks and some of the things that I think we can do in terms of growing and innovating and looking at things differently. So
I'm going to ask you a question that I used to ask in the first season of the podcast. Is technology a great equalizer, or is it a disadvantage for credit unions because it's expensive and too technical? Or
it depends. I think you're going to get a different answer depending on the credit union for that one. But I think that's been a huge focus at Elements. It's a huge focus at MSU FCU. So to me, I just feel like that's what we do. So from that perspective, that's been something really great coming here. But I think just to stay on top of that, it means we have to be on it every single day. And just have a new CIO here. And that's been really exciting. He actually hired in just about a month before I did. So, it's been really cool, like with this new journey and getting to know Craig. And he also came from a credit union out in California, Travis Credit Union. So I think when you have a lot of individuals like from that technology perspective, the way that he's thinking about things, I feel we're aligned in what we're thinking about, what we need to do from a technology perspective in order to stay relevant. And not only just stay relevant, but thinking about things that our members need and that they're looking for and making sure that we are not just meeting needs, but exceeding them.
let me ask you this question. It's something I've struggled with along my career. You have the great idea. It's not working. How do you pull the plug?
That is like one of the big things. And I think about CUInsight strategies that I've worked with in the past. You have to have like the plan to build and then the plan to back it up if things aren't going the way that you want them to go. The important thing is that there's a plan. And so it's okay to have to like step back from some of those different things, but it's understanding when's the right time to pull the plug on something. And usually I would, as a general statement, depending on what the investment is, say, you're looking at you start 1 to 3 years and you'll know at that point. And I feel like you would know before then, but it's just acknowledging the fact that this is not the correct decision for right now and owning it.
That's a tough thing to do. Yeah, that's for sure. I always thought I could fix it. So. Last question before we have a little fun with the rapid fire questions, because I want to be respectful of your time. But you mentioned earlier that at Elements, you've got a hybrid workforce currently, like many of us do. What does that word work look like for people, maybe as you look down the road, for people coming into the credit union movement as a career?
Yeah, I think we're all kind of figuring out what does a great hybrid work environment look like, especially because the culture is so important to credit unions. And I do feel strongly that there is a component to being in person that cultivates the culture, that creates an opportunity. People have natural encounters, whether it's grabbing lunch or talking in the hallway or having an innovation session at a whiteboard or whatever it is. I do feel like that's an important component of business. However, I also think that it's important to have flexibility and, opportunities for people to have that balance with any responsibilities they have, like in their personal lives as well. So I think that's a big part of, I think, how we can keep the really great employees working here and enjoying what they do every day, to have some of that balance with a hybrid opportunity.
Absolutely. Okay, so a little bit of fun. Just some rapid fire questions. The questions are rapid. Your answers don't have to be. So when was the last time you were either personally or professionally just amazed?
Oh, let's see. I'm always amazed. I have 2 daughters who Callie is 5 and Chloe is 2, and they amaze me every day. Things that they're talking about and doing, they're just like awesome little humans. So
that's fantastic. You can tell it lit up your face too. So that kind of leads into my next question. Many of us who have gotten to the point where we're leading organizations, we've tended a lot of the times, maybe we put you mentioned earlier, going all in. Sometimes that's at the detriment of our family and friends, relationships outside of work. What have you lived and learned, I guess, along the way to create some of that balance in your life? You have 2 young daughters. Any hacks that you can share with maybe that leader who has their head down but knows there's stuff outside the credit union too?
Well, for me, I'm very clear about the fact that when I'm starting something new, that I will spend probably more time on the work side, but it's about then figuring out what that cadence is to have balance. I am very close with my family and my friends, and I feel like, we spend so much of our time at work. We have to enjoy what we do every day is another component of that. And that's why I feel like being in this industry, like I love being a part of this industry. So I love my job, and my family is my biggest priority in my life as well. So I think from that perspective, you just have to figure out what works for your life and then make sure that you're sticking to those things. And sometimes it'll be hard times and sometimes it'll work out. So it's just being open to that. Change is inevitable.
Leads me to my next one. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received and who gave it to you?
Ooh, best piece of advice that I've ever received. I would probably just say my parents, because they're always just like, follow your dreams, work hard. And even if sometimes we get those moments where something doesn't happen that we think should have happened, but it can be like the biggest opportunity, but you just don't see it at that moment. And that's like one of those big pieces of advice that, just because something doesn't happen when you think it should doesn't mean that the right thing isn't going to happen when it's supposed to.
You mentioned loving what you do. I like that idea of kind of having a mission, not a job. It's that career, not a job. Do you have a personal mission statement or something that's kind of your North Star?
Oh, yeah. I think we all have a responsibility to, leave things better than we found them. And that's important to me. I work hard to, do that for my family. I work hard to do that for this organization, for my, friends. I think that's kind of like my North Star when I think about it. Leave it better than you found it. Also, this is not a dress rehearsal. That's like my favorite saying. This is life. So it's not a dress rehearsal. So you better make sure you enjoy your life.
I feel like title for the podcast right there. That's amazing. I love it. So we grew up in the same state. I probably a little bit older than you, but what's the greatest album of all time? I always love asking this question.
Ooh, greatest album. I'm a huge Motown fan. To be honest, I listen to every type of music. I just love music. I think, depending on the seasons and times in life, I literally listen to everything. But all time, oh man.
Yeah, that front to back album, right? Like,
there's so many great ones. That's a good question. I love, like I said, I love some Motown. Right now I have a very eclectic mix of music, from R&B to country to pop. I don't know if I can give you a straight answer right now because I'm really listening to a lot of really different stuff right now.
Yeah, you're all over, huh? That's cool. What are you currently reading? And on the flip side of that, is there a book that either you've gifted people or that you just think everybody should read?
Well, I am currently reading, so our DEI advisory group is reading a book right now, and it's Subtle Acts of Exclusion. And that has been, I'm not all the way through it, so I can't give a full review, but it's been a great book talking about microaggressions and understanding some of the different things that people may experience or deal with. That's a good book. To be honest, I like to read Fast Company. Just with the different articles and topics and innovative ideas, just in terms of just like kind of the things that I just pick up and read. But that's the book I'm reading now.
I'm always intrigued. We're seeing credit unions, it seems like over the past few years, making more of a move towards it. Was Elements already working on a DEI program before you came in, or is that something that has been a priority for you as well? Or
they had a DEI advisory group, but that is something that is also just important to me personally, that we are working on, what does that look like in terms of the strategic roadmap? And that's something that I really enjoyed working on at MSU FCU as well. So,
yeah. Fantastic. When you hear the word success, who is the first person that comes to mind and why?
Ooh, I think a couple different things. My parents, they are definitely like what success looks like in terms of what they did as a couple. And my dad is Black and my mom is white, and they dealt with a lot of adversity throughout their life, and seeing their journey together, as well as their journey from their different professional aspects. That is really like what success looks like to me. And it's super inspiring.
I think in 135 episodes, you might be the first person to say parents. We've had mom a lot and we've had dad a lot, but we've never had like the parental unit. I love that. That's fantastic. Well, congratulations, mom and dad. You've done well. So.
They're the best.
Whitney, there you go. That is it. I thank you so much for being on the show today. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share or asks of our audience?
No, I just really appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast today. It's been awesome getting to know you. I think what you're doing for the industry is absolutely amazing. And I think this is how we stay relevant and keep growing and doing a lot of the really cool, innovative things. So just a huge thank you to you.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. And we will actually get to see each other, I think, later this summer in person, which will be amazing because I was just emailing back and forth this morning with Renee. I think we're going to do a live podcast from the stage, actually, at the conference. So it should be cool. So I'm excited about that. I'm a little freaked out about that. As I mentioned, I'm not a big public speaker, but maybe if I have my microphone, I'll be fine. So that is it. Again, thank you so very much for taking the time today. If people have additional questions of you, what's your poison? What's the best way to get a hold of you? Twitter, LinkedIn, email?
Yeah, any of the above. Yeah, I'm definitely very active on LinkedIn and social media from that perspective, or I'm at Elements Financial and you can check us out anytime.
Absolutely. We will link to all of that in the show notes and everything else that we talked about today. Again, thank you very much for being here today, Whitney. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
A few more things before we go. Make sure to check out Allied Solutions in the show note. I'm grateful for their support of the podcast and allowing me to have this much fun doing what I do. Please also subscribe to the CUInsight Experience on your favorite podcast player. We are on them all. And if you're looking for any of the books ever mentioned on the show, a quick Google of the CUInsight Experience podcast book list and your next read is on the way from Amazon. And last but certainly not least, thank you all for listening. Y'all rock. I appreciate all the kind words that come in about the show, and I can't wait to see all of you in person again soon. Be well, friends, and talk to you soon.